Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Eddie Pratt. I'm the Managing Director of Product Focus. I'm here today with James, our special guest. We're live from Derby in the United Kingdom. One of the things that product managers really struggle with is to know, regarding AI, how do they put it in the product? How do you fit it into your product? They may be tasked with coming up with an AI story. They may be tasked with building AI into the product, even if it doesn't belong there. And so today we're with James, who's actually building AI into the product, and we're going to learn with him some really good ways of thinking, hints and tips and everything there. So James, over to you. Who are you? Who's Inni Group? And who do you help?
Yeah, okay, great. Thanks, Eddie. So I'm James. I'm the Chief Exec and Co-founder here at the Inni Group. We essentially make tax software. So we make tax software that's used by end users, so kind of the layperson rather than tax professionals. So anybody needs to get a tax return filed, they can use our app to basically prepare all their data, do all their accounting, and then it's supported by a team of in-house accountants who can provide that kind of human layer that sits on top of it. And we've been doing this for a couple of decades now, a well-established product. And over the last couple of years, well, longer than the last couple of years, we've been working very hard to get AI into the product for the right reasons.
Fantastic. So going to be super exciting to learn a lot today. So before we go into solutions, James, let's do a good product management thing and step back to what on earth are we trying to solve? What's the problem that we're solving?
Yes, okay. So we've had a kind of a perennial problem here for as long as I can remember. And it's a very typical problem that faces accountants, and we call it the shoebox problem, which is at the end of the year, a customer walks through your virtual door with a shoebox of files. There's bank statements, there's receipts, there's some stuff that we need, there's some stuff that we don't need. And classically, it's an accountant's job to take that shoebox of information, categorize it, get it all ready, get it into record-keeping software, and then onward through the process to produce a tax return. So we call it the shoebox problem. And for many, many years, we've been trying to solve it and thinking, how can we put the right technology and the right features in there such that we can have an app that can match an expert in its ability to take a shoebox of information and produce a nice, clean, consistent stream of data for onward production of a tax return. So that's the fundamental problem that we're trying to solve, is the shoebox problem.
Right, okay, so if we think about this, this isn't a problem of customers aren't saying, we want some accountancy software. They want a simple to submit, quick tax return experience, and kind of the shoebox problem is the thing behind that. That's the typical manifestation of what your typical user has.
Yeah, I think nobody wakes up and goes, oh, bloody hell, I'd really like some accounting software or some tax software. And they don't really even want to wake up and hire an accountant. The fact is, they have got to get a tax return filed. That's their motivation. The primary job that they have got is that they've got to file a tax return. It needs to be right and it needs to be done. So we've got this kind of internal mantra of getting it right and getting it done and helping people to solve that problem of filing the tax return. And everything else runs up into that. They don't really want to use accounting software, but that's the process that they go through to get the tax return done. But we don't lose sight of the North Star, which is getting a tax return filed, getting it right, getting it done.
Fantastic. So I guess you didn't just wake up thinking, we've got AI and we want to build it into the product. I guess you started off trying to solve the problem before the days of AI. So take us back to, you've identified the problem, you know your target audience, you know what the job to be done is that you need to work on.
Yeah.
So where did you start trying to solve that problem? Where have you been on that journey?
Yeah. So when we first started Inni, when we first kind of laid down the first lines of code for the app, this was very much pre-AI. So even before, classical models had really got teeth, let alone LLMs. So back then, actually, just building a great SaaS product with a great UX was already significantly ahead of our competitors. When we first started, I'd probably say that 50% of people would still go down to PC World and buy a CD-ROM and install Sage on their computer. So by actually bringing, at the time, what were quite breakthrough UX principles into the app, we already went significantly further in terms of starting to solve that shoebox problem by giving people really straightforward and easy to use tools to allow them to do their record keeping themselves. So I think for the first probably 10 years or so, we did trade off the back of having a really great UX alone. So much so we managed to go on and win an award, which is sat there behind us. That's an award from the Queen for innovation, and that was predicated on that first generation of the app. Then we have done other things in terms of trying to solve the problem. So we've just used classic kind of deterministic rules in the software. So if this, then that, in terms of helping to classify transactions and categories. And we have also used classic AI as well. So neural nets, training models, those kind of things. We did have a period of using classic AI models, but they're not without their challenges. Particularly we're not a large organization, and those things are really quite difficult to get up and running. The amount of effort that's required to train them, the quality of the training data that's required, we just couldn't get the cadence of innovation that we wanted from classic AI. So we had tried classic AI. There's still a bit of it lingering in the app, but now the model is very, very different. And with the advent of newer AI models, LLMs, other things that are available from vendors, we've had a real breakthrough in the last 24 months in terms of the quality of our AI. So it has been a continuum. We didn't wake up one day and say, well, let's use AI for the sake of it. It is all about, as the capabilities that are around evolve, we're evolving our platform to carry on helping us solve our problem of the shoebox problem, to help people get their tax returns filed.
Interesting. So you didn't kind of just land with AI because it was trendy. You did kind of try the traditional AI, and talk a little bit about that. What was the downfall of that? I guess generative AI is the kind of new thing. You were in classic AI. What happened there?
Yeah, so the massive fundamental difference is the quality of the training data that's required for both of those things. Because obviously, with an LLM, where we are today, an LLM can do a lot of that inference for you. You've not got to train it. It's using its own knowledge to infer, given this information, is it category A, B, or C? Before that, we would have to take an AI model and feed into it a huge amount of high quality expert check data. For this particular example, this is how we classify it. So you have to have this huge volume of high quality information that's fed into a piece of classic AI, and that's just to solve. We'd have a specialist piece of AI to solve one specific problem in our app, and you multiply that a dozen times over, and the cost in terms of the human capital required for classic AI just starts to grow exponentially. And as a product manager, it becomes a bit frustrating. There's all these things that you would like to solve, but realistically, you've only got 100 coins to spend with your engineering team, and you can't budget for all of that with the AI that was around at the time. And the advent of LLMs and AI that's come along in the last couple of years has really upended that equation in terms of the cost of getting AI into our app, delivering the features that can go back and solve those customer pain points.
Interesting. So a little bit of an expensive learning journey in what it takes to do classical AI, train it yourself. So you learned a lot, but you learned it wasn't the right way for you to do things cost effectively.
Correct.
And quickly. So I guess I'm guessing the next step that you took was what a lot of people are doing, and it would be just to fit an AI chatbot into your product.
Absolutely not. No. No. So that's not been our route with the latest AI and the capabilities that are out there. It goes back to being really true to the problem that we're trying to solve for customers. Is that putting an AI chatbot in our app doesn't help anybody with their shoebox problem. It doesn't help them to get the tax return right and get the tax return done. So it's always asking why are we putting these features in, and evaluating the AI that's available, and does it help you with that why? And does an AI chatbot help you with the shoebox problem? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It might help you with, if you've got a requirement to drive down your customer support costs, fine, it might help you over there. But in terms of this core job to be done, dropping in an AI chatbot was not the solution. Was not the application of AI that we're looking for. And that's why I think our journey was quite different. I remember when ChatGPT first came out, I remember we first got our hands on it, I think the kind of the November after it came out, and kind of seeing the power of it back then was quite an awakening moment. And then we've been on that whole journey with LLMs, and then starting to see, actually, when we bring it down to here and solve this specific problem an LLM-based AI into our product, you can really see the power of using it to solve very small and specific problems. So, but you wouldn't know it. You wouldn't know in certain parts of our apps that there's an LLM behind the scenes, because that's not what the user needs to know. It's just helping you solve some very specific small problems in the app.
Okay, so let's bring this to life, and we'll take a look now at just a very quick demo, because that so speaks volumes. So let's swap over to the demo, James, and you give us a walkthrough of what's happening here.
Okay, so this is our tax app. It's designed to be really straightforward for users. There's no scary tax terminology in here. There's no credits and debits and things like that. But what I'm going to show you is a pretty straightforward requirement. So I'm going to upload some receipts. So what I've got here is, if I show you some receipts, so you can see here, that's a pretty, I mean, it's probably not a great picture coming through on the stream, but it's just as bad here. So that's a receipt from an electrician, and buried away in there is an amount and what it's for. Here's a better receipt for some landlord insurance. And here is a pretty terrible receipt from Screwfix for a padlock. On this receipt, for example, there are half a dozen numbers. You know, there's the price, there's the VAT, there's the amount that was paid on a credit card. And typically, a human would look at this and have to extract the information and pull out the right requirements for a tax return, and then also categorize it for tax as well. Whereas what we do, I'm just going to upload these 3 receipts, drop them into here, and get that importing. And then what's happening here is that our AI is kicking in. It's a multi-layered pipeline of AI, which I'm sure we'll chat about in a second, which is reading those images, pulling out a description for each of those receipts, and then pushing it even further and deciding on how that should be categorized for a tax return. So what's just happened there is those 3 receipts have been converted into 3 lines in this particular person's record keeping. So that first receipt that was quite hard to see, you can see there it's got electrical installation for a garden office, and it's categorized it as property repairs and maintenance and pulled out the amount. That's receipt for some insurance. It's got the description right, residential landlord insurance, and again, categorized it correctly from HMRC's point of view for rents, rates, insurances. And finally, that receipt from Screwfix, it's pulled it out, and it's got a garage defender padlock, and it's categorized it as repairs and maintenance. So really straightforward user experience. Here's my shoebox. Here's 3 receipts. I'm going to drop them in, and you can see how it works. And I'm just going to show you a slightly more complex example as well. So this time, this is something that we get from a letting agent. So let's say you've got a rental property and you've got a letting agent who's managing it for you. Letting agents love to send over these really verbose statements, and to the layperson, it's quite hard to figure out what's relevant for tax or not, because we've got opening balances, closing balances, net payments to landlords, and our AI has been designed to handle all of that. So I'm just going to get that importing. Similar principle, but what it's going to do is pull out all the relevant lines from this letting agent statement. It'll ignore all the stuff that the user doesn't need to know from a tax return point of view, and then it will categorize them as well. So there you go, it's just gone through, and you can see it's just pulled in all of those transactions. Again, we've got rent here, categorized its rental income, management fees, categorized them. The letting agent's installed a new kitchen tap, and you can see it's got it there as property repairs and maintenance. So that's what we're talking about with the shoebox problem. The user can now go from dropping in these first-hand documents, receipts, and statements, drop them into our app, and we've got AI here that pulls out the right information, categorizes it, date, description, amount, and then critically adds in that category that's required from HMRC's point of view to prepare and submit a tax return.
Wow, fantastic. Super slick there. So you can metaphorically see the shoebox emptying and going into the system. So there's a lot of stuff that was going on there. Should we just unpack it and just talk about, from the point that you've got your receipts or your invoices and you're emptying your shoebox, take us through step by step and help us understand what's orchestrating it and where AI is being used at different steps.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so I'll give you, behind the curtains, you can understand the pipeline that works behind this. So the first thing we've got there is that we've got a very specific piece of AI. And in fact, the key thing for all of this is that driving this is not a single LLM prompt where we give it an image and say, can you do this, this, and this? Can you pull out the date, description, amount, and category? we've broken it down into a series of much, much smaller problems, and then we find the best solution that we can to solve that significantly smaller problem. So this is not one prompt to rule them all. There's a mixture of AI from different vendors solving different problems along the way. But from a user's point of view, all they do is they drag and drop a file in, and it appears in their records. So the first thing that's in common for both of those is that we have a very specific piece of AI that takes an image, a PDF, multi-page PDF, a receipt, or whatever it may be, and it has one job, which is to pull the information from that into a machine-readable format. It's not trying to infer any meaning. It's not trying to categorize it. It doesn't care where it's from. It doesn't really even care if it's a receipt or a bank statement or a letting agent statement. And we went out there to find the best piece of AI that we could, that was the best at taking an image of a document and turning it into a machine readable format that we can then push down into the rest of our pipeline. Tried many different vendors there. We've tried lots of different products out there, and we are using a third-party product. So it's from Microsoft that allows us to do that specific piece at the head of the pipeline. So what we've got now internally in that pipeline, we've now got a machine readable view of a document. So that's, it's coming out. Essentially, it's kind of plain text with a lot of extra metadata to allow the next stage of the AI to kick in. So that's the first part. The next part, we then kind of fork the pipeline depending on whether it's a receipt or a bank statement or a letting agent statement. And for example, for a bank statement or letting agent statement, the next stage of the AI, its job is to find all the individual lines and pull them out. You've got one job, go through this, don't infer any meaning yet. I just want you to find the individual lines, date, description, amount, pull them out into structured data for the next part of our AI pipeline. So that happens with that part of the pipeline. And then for receipts, it's slightly different. We don't drill in and pull out individual lines. Given that machine readable version of a receipt, we've got an AI, and its job is to get the date, description, and amount for the overall receipt. So it reads all the lines and it reads where it's from, and we ask it to come up with a one-line summary for what that receipt is. We don't break it down into individual lines. So we've already got 3 specific pieces of AI solving much, much smaller problems. And then the next part of the AI is then when we talk about tax. So given these lines that have come from a statement, or this description that's come from a receipt and the vendor of the receipt as well, the next AI's job is to figure out for tax purposes what category that needs to go into. And we've simplified that massively, which we'll probably talk about in a second, which is traditional accounting software seduces the user into dozens and dozens and dozens of ways of categorizing things, which are completely unnecessary for tax purposes. And when we step back to the why of getting it right, getting it done, getting your tax return submitted, any extra questions that we ask people are just noise. So that AI has got a really simple job, which is given all these categories that we've got from HMRC, which is half a dozen or so, which category does this individual line fit into? And it's not even within that pipeline for the categorization, there's layers within there, because the very first thing that we do before we even hit an AI, the first question that we ask is, has the user categorized this themselves previously? So have we seen it? And has the user kind of accepted that this description for this amount is for this category? And if they have, we always go back to that and say, oh, it's a match. You've done this previously. We're just going to do that again. That's what you said, and we'll categorize it that way. If there's no match because they haven't done it previously, we have a few, before we hit AI, we have a few short circuits. So we have a few very simple kind of deterministic rules. So, if the description is just rent, it is pretty reasonable for us to infer that the category for that is going to be rent. If the description is just mortgage, it is pretty reasonable for us to infer that's going to be the case. So we don't go off to a piece of AI that's got latency and that lag for users, when actually a deterministic rule will do. So it's not AI for the sake of it. We've not guzzled the AI Kool-Aid and made it do absolutely everything. We've got a layered approach about the best piece of technology to solve that specific problem. And then finally, we go through all of those layers and we still don't know what category it is. We then push it off to an AI. And its job is, given this information, can you tell us with confidence that it's one of these categories? And if you can, let us know what category it is. And if you can't, say you can't. That's it. That's how the pipeline works, end to end for something like that.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because in a lot of use cases, you think that there's just a giant AI or a giant LLM, and you're just throwing everything in, and then the AI is deciding what to do and orchestrate. But in this I guess we've got a concept of, you've got a user experience, you've got classical software solution, which is orchestrating the user's experience. And so you've kind of got a backbone of traditional software, and you've kind of got AI muscles or superpowers, which you're pulling on for the very specific bit of the solution. So like you said, the best in class piece of software to be able to extract data from receipt or invoice images. You've got AI for the categorization, but more than that, you're not just using AI for everything. They're using some traditional logic where it makes sense as well. It's not just AI is the savior of the world. AI is being used for very specific niche compartmentalized problems.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think, you kind of, no matter how complex your feature is, it is a smaller, it's a series of small problems that need to be solved. And I think for, this approach that we've taken is that we solve the small problem, just keep solving the small problems and then move on to the big ones. But I'm fairly sure that we will never run out of small problems to solve. And we just focus on solving the smaller problems. And eventually you're solving these smaller problems, and that adds up to that big problem being solved. As you can see, so that from the end user's point of view, you drag and drop a receipt in, you drag and drop a statement in, and it looks like magic. It really, we show this to tax professionals, and they're like, I cannot believe it's done that. And it looks like magic, and it looks like it's an incredible piece of AI that's running end to end, but it's not. It's a series of small problems that have been solved with the right piece of technology at the right time. And when you add it all up together, you just get a killer feature in your app.
Well, that's fantastic. So one of the things that struck me there was the AI is super capable, can do anything. So I think you're using, I think you mentioned OpenAI for your categorization.
I didn't mention it yet.
Oh,
but yes,
sorry.
we are.
Yeah, so, okay, yeah. But sorry. Spoiler there. Yeah. So in the categorization of, you said the problem is, you've got these receipts or invoices and things like that, and you've got to classify them or categorize them in some way. So talk about the constraints there and how you get the best results from there.
Yeah, I think it links back to something I said a moment ago, which is if anybody who's had the misfortune, I hope there's nobody here from Xero or anybody like that, anyone's had the misfortune to use a piece of traditional accounting software like Xero, you come to record an expense or a piece of income, and you get this really daunting list of categories, and there's lots of ambiguity and overlap. You've got a specific expense, and you've got a list of 30 possible categories, and you whittle it down and go, oh, it could be any of these 4, right? So that you've got this overlap between the 4 categories, and you end up going, oh, sod it, I think it's that, and you end up with this inconsistency with your record keeping. And that's you'd have that if you gave those same categories to an LLM, to an AI, you'd have that same outcome, is that there'll be a variance in the categorization because there's that crossover and ambiguity. It's like, a Venn diagram with 4 circles that are overlapping for a given transaction. And the breakthrough for us was pulling it back and realizing that asking a user to plonk it into one of 30 categories is completely unnecessary. And it sounds really obvious now, because all we've done is we went back to that kind of primary source and said, at the very, very end of this process, it's going to go on a tax return, and there's only 7 boxes it can go in, and that's it. So we look at that and say, okay, so why are we giving the user the option to put it in 30 categories for us to then reduce that down to 7 categories? We just don't need to do it. It's not adding value to the users. It's extra noise for us, and it causes a problem with AI. So the breakthrough is saying, actually, what happens if we go from 30 categories, but we cut it down to 7 categories as per a tax return, per that end goal. And each of those categories has suddenly got very clear blue water in between each category. So when you present an LLM with a transaction and say you've got 7 categories, and here's what goes in each category, the expert match rate, so at what rate the AI gets it correct, goes up significantly. And as I said a moment ago, it sounds really obvious now, but it wasn't at the time. It's only by going through and going, actually, hang on, do we really need this middle layer of complexity in our app that's tripping the AI up? Or actually, can we reduce this down to 7 categories? And we had that breakthrough, and the quality of the products just absolutely rocks on the back of that.
So, I mean, the thing that strikes me with this is that this is kind of where innovation happens, because this is kind of not about the solution. This is kind of going back to the way that people are approaching the problem at the minute. So, you know, the traditional way that the industry approaches the problem is you've got a plethora, lots of different categories for categorizing a transaction, and you're going back to fundamentals and asking, does that need to exist like that? Do we need all of these categories, or is there another way of approaching this? And so you've really gone back and, I guess, innovated on the problem space rather than even the solution space.
Yes.
And then and I guess the result is what you're saying is that rather than giving the LLM ultimate flexibility to give you any answer back, you're giving it a very specific box to work in, and just saying, give me a very specific return of a result for a query that we're giving you.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point there, that Eddie, that I've not probably kind of pressed home, is that our use of LLMs here is not like a chatbot. You know, we're not asking it to come up with, you know, 300 words on X, Y, and Z. We constrain the LLM and give it a job and say, okay, I want you to use your inference engine for a given transaction to put it into one of these 7 boxes. And we clamp the output of the LLM, so it has nowhere to go. You can, you know, we don't ask it to, how do I put this? So we tell the LLM what the 7 possible categories are, and that's the only thing it can come back. It can't make up an 8th category. It doesn't work like that. The way we've constrained the LLM is to only allow it to put it into those predetermined categories that we give it. So it can either put it in one of those 7 categories or say, I can't do this. That's all it can do. And that's only because the platform that we're using, the AI and the API, allows us to do that. And that's a relatively new thing for LLMs as well, because when we first started using LLMs, completely different. You could tell it was 7 categories, but it was still invent number 8, and that was an absolute pain. And it's only recent breakthroughs with the platforms and how they work that allows us to kind of lock down the outputs. So then it's got a very specific job, which is we're using LLMs for a classification problem where we are determining what those categories are that it can put those transactions into, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, fantastic. It's super interesting because you imagine that you just want to use this huge brain of an LLM to be able to do anything, and it's actually feels counterintuitive that you're getting better results by putting constraints around it. And so I guess that's an interesting thing. So you've got a sub problem of the whole workflow, you're constraining it even further, and you're saying, this is your job, do it really well.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Interesting. So the other bit that I think is interesting for product managers, you know, it's always a decision to be made. It's a build versus buy. And so in this, I mean, I'm imagining that you're not building your own AI, you've got AI at different stages. So can you talk about, you know, how you decided that as a product manager?
Yeah. So we haven't built anything. Well, we have, you know, our core app, that orchestration layer, the UX, all that kind of stuff. You know, the you know, behind the scenes, we have the code that orchestrates a receipt coming in at one end and the classification coming out at the other end. But we don't host any of the AI ourselves. You know, we've not got LLMs running on GPUs in our own bloody data centers or anything like that. We're not doing that. We're using, you know, Eddie's mentioned we're using OpenAI for some of our AI. We're using Microsoft hosted AI for parts of our pipeline as well. And it was a conscious decision, because I've seen our competitors go out there, engineering led, and gone, oh, we need to build it. We've got to build it. We've got to own it. It's got to be in our data center. We've got to, you know, we've got to have these models. What if OpenAI go bust? You know, what you know, so, you know, all this, you know, the doomsaying about what could happen. Therefore, we need to host and build our own models and train them and tune them and all that kind of stuff. Fine, but I'd really ask the question of why. You know, go back to the business case of what is the point in doing that? Because the AI that we're using OpenAI, but we could swap it out tomorrow to Anthropic, to Mistral. We could host our own AI if that's what we really wanted to do, but we've decided not to. So there's no benefit in us building and hosting our own AI on our own bare metal or, you know, GPUs that are in the cloud, because there's no business case for it. It doesn't improve the user experience. The AI that you're seeing here, this isn't a custom model. We've not gone through extensive tuning of this, because actually through really high quality prompt engineering and the right quality data that's going in, we get the expert match rate that far exceeds what we thought we could achieve. And I think a lot of people have just assumed right at the beginning to get the best results, you've got to build it. And again, I look at our competitors, when AI was really kicking off, they decided to invest in AI infrastructure. All these blog posts about the amazing things that their engineering teams were doing in terms of experimenting with these models and installing GPUs and servers and all that kind of stuff. They've still not shipped a product. They have not got those features into their app. And here we are, we're kind of, I feel like we're the rabbit in the hare, is that we're taking a slightly different path and we are not building this stuff. We are using off-the-shelf commodity AI, but being very, very thoughtful and specific about how we're doing it. And our time to market exceeds our competitors, and our cost to market, I suspect, is a tenth of our competitors as well.
Wow, fantastic. So it's, I guess if someone's already solving the problem really well, the cost effective, it helps you get the customer experience that you want. It's making that build buy decision when you're working with the rest of the team pretty easy to make. It's not a difficult decision to make.
Yeah.
Interesting. So let's talk about the thing that people are always saying about AI, you know, it can make mistakes, it's not perfect. I guess talk about the stakes with making a tax return. Sure, it's always 100% correct.
It's got to be accurate.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, you know, the industry that we're in. So we're in tax. You know, if we make a mistake, there are real implications for people. They could end up paying too much tax, or they could end up paying too little tax. You know, HMRC, our tax authority, could be on their case. So, you know, we're in a relatively tough industry in terms of getting this right. You know, it's not quite as bad as healthcare. You know, this isn't lives on the line. But there are reasonably high stakes for the implication of mistakes. You know, we are regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. You know, we connect to HMRC. There's certain requirements on us in terms of how we approach this. And what we could do is we could wake up and say, okay, unless AI is 100% correct, we just don't ship it. We don't do it. We don't launch a product, because unless it's 100% correct, then we haven't got a product. We can't possibly put this in the app. And I think that's probably the default position for many people, particularly if you're in a regulated or kind of riskier industry. But the interesting realization is that, is 100% correct actually the right benchmark for you or not? And I'll tell you something really interesting about tax in the UK. HMRC have stats on the number of tax returns that are submitted, and they've got errors on them. And it might surprise you to know that in the UK, 1 in 5 tax returns that are submitted are incorrect, and that includes the ones that are submitted by accountants as well.
1 in 5.
1 in 5.
Wow.
So 20% of tax returns are incorrect, and that excludes kind of malicious intent. You know, this is just genuine accidents that people are making, wrong amount, wrong box, whatever it may be. So today's benchmark is actually 80% correct. That's the accepted benchmark today, but we don't talk about it. So when we think about AI, so actually it's got to be 100% accurate. Like, bloody hell, but actually humans are only 80% accurate. So is it really realistic that we don't ship a product unless it's 100% accurate or not? So once you kind of you start to dial back from that, so actually, so maybe it doesn't need to be 100% accurate, but what do we do? Because ultimately, the way it works, you use our app, and at the end of the day, the user's got to press a button and submit that tax return to HMRC. And what actually happens if that tax return is wrong, ultimately, it's actually down on the users from a kind of a legal fine penalty point of view. But we need to be really responsible and helping users to get that tax return done correctly. And the approach that we've taken with AI is that it's not perfect. It's really good. I mean, it beats the 80%. It is better than humans, but it's not perfect. But we don't kid our users and fib and say it is 100% perfect. We're very upfront, and we say, you know, when you use the app and a transaction comes in that AI has touched, it lands in your accounts as a draft. And when you click on it, there's a very clear box at the top that says, this is done by AI. You'll need to check it. So it's a really open conversation with users right at the start to say, there's AI here. It's been used. It's helping you to get this done quicker, but you still need to check over it. So we've got things like that in the app that is very clear when AI has been used. But there's other less sophisticated things that we do as well. So when somebody comes to submit a tax return, we give them a preview of their tax return, but it's just a very simple piece of UX where we show them all their transactions in a given category next to each other. So it's very easy for you as a user to eyeball it and see if something doesn't look right. If you've got 6 transactions that are all the same, and there's a 7th one that's the description, date, and the amount's wrong, you can very quickly eyeball it and say, actually, that's in the wrong category. I'll move that there. So we're not using AI as a black box and pretending that it's 100% accurate. We are positioning it as something to help the users. It's not a disclaimer. Disclaimer is a really strong word, but there's a very upfront message to say it's been used. You need to check things, and then through the UX, we help users to increase their confidence that it's right. And then we also have, part of our value proposition is that if people do want reassurance, we then have human in the loop, which is then an upsell for our kind of land and expand business model.
So I mean, you say disclaimer, but really what
Yeah.
you're saying is you're building trust and transparency into the process, because
Yes.
you're saying we're helping you get faster and to be able to submit the tax return more quickly, but you're saying totally transparent. AI's here.
Yeah.
You can't abdicate complete responsibility.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if you use an accountant, you're the ultimate one who says this is correct to the best of my knowledge. So
Yeah.
you're just being transparent about that. And so how are you building human into the loop with let's talk value proposition and positioning?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the product that I've shown you, we've got 3, when it comes to our value prop, there's 3 layers to it. There's a good, better, best, and we call it DIY, assisted, and done for you. And DIY is, you buy this SaaS app from us and you use the tools that are in here, you use the AI, we've got great support docs that goes with it. But basically it's a pure SaaS service. You use the app and then you submit your tax return to HMRC and you're taking full responsibility for the accuracy of that tax return. The next tier up is assisted. And what we do with that is that each quarter, when people need to make their tax submissions, the users do all the record keeping in the app. They use the AI bookkeeping. But then what we do is we then loop in a human tax expert, an accountant, who will review what you have done in collaboration with the AI as a user in the app. And they'll scan through everything with their expert eye and say, that looks great, terrific, well done, you've got it right, or actually no, that probably needs to go there. You shouldn't be claiming for that. Have you thought about this that you might have missed? So we introduce humans and back into the proposition as an upsell. So it's a land and expand model. Come in, 69 quid a year for the SaaS product. But when you get to the first quarter, if you need a bit of help, click the button, we'll upgrade your price plan, and then you'll get that human reassurance and trust that you want. Then our top package is done for you, which is you just don't even need to log in. You just email us the files and we'll do all of this for you. And then from our point of view as a business, we then get the efficiency gains of AI in our margin, because then our team of accountants and bookkeepers will be driving the AI to get the record keeping done. So I think it's a really neat way of approaching this, which is if you just want to use the AI and you trust it, amazing. If you still want human reassurance, use the AI for your own personal productivity. But then what we have got is skilled experts who will come in at the right time and just check everything's okay for you. And it's a model that we think we're going to do really well with.
Fantastic, actually, James. So we're just looking at time here, and we're marching on. But let's talk about another element in kind of positioning in the market. So I'm trying to think of some ways that you're approaching different product management things here. So I guess in the market, you're just positioning as AI-powered accounting or AI-powered tax returns. So talk about how you're approaching things there.
So we absolutely don't do that, because I think that would I think that would appeal to some early adopters, and I think the rest of the market would run away scared, because I don't think they're quite ready for the full AI being associated with tax. But actually, it's more fundamental than that. It's good solid product marketing, which is we go back and talk about the job that needs to be done, which is we don't talk about selling an AI solution. We talk about getting your tax returns right and getting it done. In fact, Eddie, if it's right with you, I'll just show you the landing page for this, because it might bring it to life a bit better. So this is how we position the product, making tax digital, your deadlines in one place, every update done. And the feature that I've just shown you, this is how we sell it. Upload, categorized, done. And there's a scant mention of AI here, but we're just focusing on the problem that needs to be solved. So if you remember right at the start of this, we mentioned the shoebox problem. And here is the shoebox problem from a product marketing perspective. Shoebox problem is upload it, it gets categorized, it's done. So we're not heroing and saying, this is an AI tax product. We're heroing and saying, we know what job you've got that needs to get done. You've got to get your tax return right. You've got to get it done. And when it comes to actually the bookkeeping, just upload it. It'll get categorized. It'll get done. That's it.
So we're leading with the benefits. We're focusing on the jobs to be done. We're focusing on the pain points that the customers have and answering those pain points. So it's, you know, the classical product marketing, and we're not getting seduced by the AI buzzword, because I mean, like you've mentioned, nobody's knocking on your door saying, have you got an AI powered solution, please? And so they don't want to hear that. They want to hear about, are you solving my problems? Do you understand my problems? Can you help me do things cheaper, faster, quicker, better, more efficiently?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the, you know, it's the, we were chatting this morning, Eddie, it's the first principles of product management, right? It's why we get up in the morning. It's actually to solve users' problems. Is that, you know, hopefully your CEO's on your case about product market fit. It's about discovering those problems and delivering the solutions to people's problems. And if AI helps you, great. But AI is not the be all end all. People, as I say, don't bang on your door saying, oh, I really want AI. They bang on your door saying, I just want to get my tax return done as quickly and easily as possible. And then we are skilled practitioners as product managers and software engineers to be judicious in picking the right tool to get that job done for them.
Interesting. I think there's a lot of learning for people there, and what we try to do today is to not focus on the, you know, AI is just this tool that you have to go around, you know, hammering everything with. We're just kind of going back to the basics, that actually you still need to be great at fundamental product management skills, because you've got to look to the market. You've got to be able to look for jobs worth solving, which people will pay for, which people will come to you for, and that you're actually going to use AI and technology in the best possible way to actually add value to the product, add value to the business, add value to the customer. And I guess you seem to have navigated that pretty well. So, James, before we go to questions, so if anybody has any questions, please just tap them into the question box. Nobody else will see your questions. They're private between us and you. So while you're just thinking about anything to ask James, where do we find more information, and what's next for you and the business?
So you can find us. So our company, if you go to Inni.tax, that's our kind of overarching brand, the technology brand.
How do we spell that?
INNI.tax.
Right.
Inni.tax. Thanks. So go to Inni.tax, and that's our kind of parent company that's driving this forward. And in the UK, there's 15 million tax returns that are filed every single year. And we're on a mission to think, actually, so how many of those can we reach and get them to use our platform? Because we absolutely passionately believe in this model of choice, which is use a SaaS app, loop in an expert if it's right for you. We've all got our own reasons why we want an expert to support us. We're really passionate about this model. And what we want to do is, through great product management and through great GTM, is expand our TAM and try and reach as many of those 15 million people as possible. So we're on a mission. You know, we've got a great product here. We've got a proven track record. This year we're raising investment. So it's the first time we've done it. We've been bootstrapped for many years. This year we've seen the size of this opportunity. We've seen how great this product is, and we are raising investment to allow us to expand our TAM this year and reach.
And TAM is?
Sorry, total addressable market. So at the moment, you know, there's 15 million people in the UK, and at the moment we can probably serve about 1 million of them. And what we can do is implement the right features in our product roadmap to unlock the next tranche of 1 million users, a couple of million users, and then combine that with a go-to-market strategy to then get out there and reach those users where they are and tell them how we can now solve their problems. So we're looking to raise cash, and that's going to go into go-to-market stuff, and it's going to go into engineering as well. And what I really hope at this year as well, we raise the cash, and we're looking to bring product management resource in as well. So we're looking to hire product managers to help us to get this right roadmap together, to listen to customer insights, to listen to what's going on in the market, and navigate this TAM expansion and feed these requirements into engineering such that we've got a great product that's got a greater chance of reaching those 15 million tax returns that need to be filed each year.
Wow, that's exciting. We could talk for absolutely ages here. And one thing that James is also doing is not only building AI into his product in the way we're describing here, but actually, like a lot of product managers are wondering about how you can use AI to improve productivity, how you use it to accelerate things like looking at customer insight, perhaps looking at synthetic personas, other things like that. So if you're interested in another webinar, hopefully we'll get over some of the little glitches we've had today. But if you're interested in hearing more about how James is using AI for his own productivity to speed up requirements going to the development team and all of those other things, please drop a note in the chat because we'd like to see if that's interesting to you. So James, fantastic, inspiring. I think a lot of people will have questions here. So I'll have a quick peek into the questions and see if we've got, okay. Can you talk a little bit about quality assurance, James? Is that something you could pick up on there if you just talk a little bit about that?
I'm going to assume that we're talking about the quality of the outputs from the AI.
Yes.
So I'm going to assume that we're talking about
the
match rate. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, we can kind of dive off into the whole world of evals and how we can kind of evaluate whether an AI is working as well as it should do. And we certainly started off in that approach, but then we kind of empirically evaluated the performance of the AIs, and we realized very quickly that it was a very high number and very, very stable. So, you know, it's in the very high 90% in terms of the expert match rate. And that was the cue for us to put it live and put it into product. But what happens now, so in terms of the ongoing piece, is that every time the AI makes a prediction and presents it to a user, if the user saves that transaction and doesn't make any changes, we log that as a positive hit and say, actually, the AI got it absolutely perfect. If the user makes an edit before they save it, we log that as a miss. So actually what's happening is real users are using it. We are logging the match rate of the AI versus what the user selected. Plus then we've got the ability for an expert to review that as well and check on the quality. So we have these real-time metrics in terms of the quality of the AI and whether users are accepting those suggestions or not. And I think when we first started off on this journey, particularly from our background in doing classic AI, we were very interested in that, the evaluation of the expert match rate. But then when we realized how high it was and how consistent it was, we didn't then need to labor a lot of time in terms of putting expensive instrumentation and offline evaluation of the models in place.
Interesting. So this is a big thing for people because I guess product managers have, like everybody in the industry, you hear of all of the failures and all of the problems and all of the inaccuracies, but not many people talk about, well, how do you deal with that and what is accurate enough like and how do you test it? Fantastic. So one question we've got is from Florian. He just wants to know what is it that you're providing to AI? Are you having to provide it lots of background information, or are you giving it something very specific? Talk about what you're providing.
Yeah, so we try and kind of constrain and limit it as much as possible. So, for example, for that categorization piece, you know, what it gets from the system prompts is that for a given user, we pull all the possible categories, that list of 7 categories, and then for each of those categories, there's rich information that is provided by our own tax experts about the boundaries for what would typically be inside that and what would not be inside that category. So that's the kind of the system prompt, which is here's your categories and here's the narrative that goes with it. And that narrative has been produced by a tax expert. And then the kind of the user prompt that then goes into that is essentially date description amount. So here's a transaction, here's the categories. Now please predict what category you think it is. And it doesn't need to know anything else. It doesn't need to know anything else about the user. It doesn't need to know how their accounts are configured or what tax year it is or anything like that. So we try and reduce the inputs to the AI, the smallest possible set that we can to get the job done. And this is because it goes back to the point that I've been saying throughout all of this, it is a series of smaller AIs with very, very specific jobs that need to be done. So it's not like trying to seed an AI with thousands of pieces of context to make a very complex decision. It is about reducing it into small decisions, small amounts of information.
Wow. So big brain, but we only want to use a little bit of your brain.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we've got a question from Sam, who's asking, what's your biggest learning or biggest mistakes regarding AI that you've got there? So I'll give you some flexibility there.
Biggest learning or biggest mistake. I don't, because the whole classic AI thing was a bit of a pain. Like, the training neural nets and all that kind of stuff, and it doesn't really need a great deal of discussion, because I can't imagine many people are now going to go off and train a neural net. But there was this promise of that first gen of AI, that it was going to be the savior to all of our problems, and we invested a lot. We had people dedicated to it, and it just didn't get the results. But would we have done anything differently? No, of course not. You have to go through that to realize that isn't the right fit, and it's not the right solution. But then I think the biggest learning for this year is, we're very fortunate because we're a small company. I'm the chief exec, great management team, good exec team, and a really encouraging team as well. So we saw early prototypes of AI and what it could do, and our head of tax, this is a guy who's a tax and accountancy background, gone, bloody hell, that's amazing. Just go, just run with that ball and think bigger than you thought previously with that, because that can upend the industry. Accountants would love to have that in their hands. So positive feedback from people saying, actually, that's an amazing proof of concept. Let's turn it into a product as quickly as possible. So that's been a really positive upside for us. And I think that's a great place that we're at, being a smaller business, that we can move quickly and bring this product to market much sooner than large organizations.
When you were doing the invoice, this is a question from Pavel. So when you were trying to appraise different systems for, let's have a look here, for the, let's call it the invoice parsing, so to speak.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
How did you appraise or benchmark or judge which was the best system there, or your approach there?
No, it's a doddle. Just take a load of documents, try them through a few different AIs, and that was the case. It was just a human eyeballing it to say, right, this is the data that's come out the other side. How does it compare to what's gone in? And that list narrowed down very, very quickly. So there's some ones that were very, very promising, lots of hype around them, and you only get a few dozen images through, and you realise that off the shelf it wasn't going to work for us. So that was much quicker than we thought to evaluate the image side of it. And I say we're using Microsoft products, and it's very boring, and it's not very exciting, and nobody talks about it. It hasn't got any hype around it whatsoever, but it does the job really, really, really well for us. That evaluation process was easier than we thought once you cut through the hype and just empirically evaluate whether that can consistently convert that image into machine readable data.
I guess one question from me, James, is around using AI and people's perceptions when you're chatting to them. So I guess the wowed and the love the product. What sort of questions do people ask you? Do you have any common recurring questions? Or
how much is it? When can I buy it?
All right, okay. That's a fantastic question to have.
It's I met with a team of accountants last week from a large organisation, and as flippant as it was, how much is it? When can I buy it? This is some senior people in a large organisation. Show them the demo, and their jaws did drop in the same way that it did for our head of tax. When we first showed it to a tax professional, it's like, and the questions, there are a couple of basic questions, but then it was straight into, this is great. How much is it, and how do we integrate it into our workflow, which is amazing validation from a PMF point of view, product market fit. If you're sharing that kind of demonstration with somebody, and the questions that they jump to are, when can I have it? How much is it? How do I fit it into my processes? You know that you're doing something well in terms of job to be done and solving that problem. And that's really the kind of questions that we get, is that it's so clear in the value proposition, the problem it's solving, and how well the tech is put together to solve that specific problem, that we kind of skip all those typical questions that you might expect to get, and people just go on to, that's great, I can see what it does. let's talk about how we get it going.
No, I mean, that must be really uplifting.
Oh, it's
because
amazing.
I mean, that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing, isn't it? The technology's on the side, but are you solving the right problem? Does it tap into people? Do they empathize with it? They understand it. They understand the value. And I mean, I guess that's what we live and breathe as product managers, because we were talking about this earlier. With all of the availability of AI, you can kind of solve anything, and you can solve anything quite quickly. But the thing is, are you solving the right things? Are you solving a pervasive problem in the market? Is it a job worth doing? Are people willing to pay for it? Is it competitive? Is it better than existing solutions? And so I think, product managers still have a very, very important role in the market with that classical product management skill set. And AI is there to kind of assist them.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Interesting, fantastic. Well, James, I think we're at time. We're at time now, but I think a few people have had a few snags, but not from our end here. I think there's some Livestorm snags, but don't worry, because Livestorm does record this, and so if it's a transmission side problem from them, you should see the video, hear all of the questions and discussion when you get a link to the recording shortly after the webinar has finished. James, it's been a super pleasure. I wish you and the team all of the best and success with the new product, and thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, Eddie.
Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks.
Goodbye.